Okay, so in order to do this question, we need to simplify that expression first. So what we'll do here is just get rid of that part and start simplifying the expression by looking at what's going on. So if you look at what I'm actually asking you to do here, there's a times symbol. So I'm asking you to multiply these expressions together. So we know that we can do negative 4 times 5. So I'm just going to write that down first. Okay, and that takes care of this part. Scratching them out is a good strategy so that you don't forget to do any one of those variables. So then we'll do the a's. There's no more a's at the top, so I'm just going to rewrite a to the power of 2 and scratch it out. For the b's though, there's a b to the power of 3 and there's a b to the power of 2. When you multiply bases that are the same, you have to keep the same base and then add the exponent. So this is what it should look like. For the c's, there's only one of the c's and one of the d's, so I'm just going to recopy it since there's absolutely nothing else I can do with that. Now at the bottom, it doesn't look like I can do very much. I have a's, I have c's and d's. I have a 1 in front here, so I'm going to do 1 times 2. But really, other than that, I'm just going to put all these letters together. And for now, we won't worry about which order to put them in. So I'm just going to do the math at the top here. Negative 4 times 5 is negative 20. We have a to the power of 2, b to the power of 5, c to the power of 5, and then d. And then down here, we have 1 times 2, which is 2. And then, of course, we couldn't do anything with that, so we're going to write it this way. At this point now, there's really nothing you can do at the top, there's nothing you can do at the bottom, and so now you just have to make your next choice. So you have to look at what's happening here and realize that this line means to divide. So we're going to take the negative 20 and divide it by 2. And again, I'm just going to scratch them out so that I know I've taken care of that. You're going to go to the a's. When you're dividing bases that are the same, whether they're numbers or letters, you keep the same base and you subtract the exponents. So that's for the a's. Make sure you don't mix up the a's and the c's. It doesn't matter if the a is the first one or not. You have to make sure that they're the same base. That's what's more important. As for the b's, there's only a b to the power of 5, nothing else I can do. For the c's, there's a c to the power of 5, and I'm going to subtract the 2 since they're the same base and we're dividing. And then for the d's, we have exponents that are invisible here. They're exponents of 1s. So I'm just going to keep the same base and subtract my exponents. So if you do negative 20 divided by 2, you will get negative 10. 2 minus 2 is 0. B to the power of 5 hasn't changed. 5 minus 2, is 3. And 1 minus 1 is 0. Now, here's the thing. You guys like to guess what the answers are sometimes, so you have to be very, very careful. If I switch a to any number, if I say a is 15, for example, well, if you try 15 to the power of 0, you're going to see that anything to the power of 0 is always the same answer. So 15 to the power of 0 is 1. If you try negative 2,579.25 to the power of 0, the answer is going to be the same, because anytime you, it's because I didn't put brackets. In this case here, it's negative 1 because of the negative in the front, but if I put that in a bracket, you'll see that it will just give me 0. Okay, so I'll just show you that. So you can see here, it doesn't matter which number you input, the answer will always be 1. So we know that this part is going to be equal to 1, and we know that this part is also going to be equal to 1. So what we're going to do here is just kind of scrap it, because 1 times anything is always the anything, if that makes sense. So if I say negative 10 times 1, it's going to be negative 10. So we're going to kind of scrap that a to the power of 0. What we can't do is do this, because when we do that, we know that the exponent is a 1. So a to the power of 0 and a to the power of 1 are not the same. So what I do is I just scrap it. And then I have b to the power of 5, c to the power of 3. Like I said, scrap if you have anything to the power of 0, because 1 times this whole expression here is equal to that whole expression there. So this is the simplified expression. Okay, that's what I'm looking for since there is no more work to do. If you leave this with a d to the power of 0, you can still do one more step and scrap it. Okay, so this is what I'm looking for, -10, b to the power 5, and c to the power of 3. Now, I did continue and had part 2 to this question. So we can continue if I give you the value of B, A, C, and D. Now, we don't have to worry about A, B, C, and D because we don't have an A and we don't have a D. So right off the bat, you can go ahead and put an X on A and put an X on D. So if we try doing this work, we know the answer was -10, B to the power 5, and C to the power of 3. So we'll go ahead and put an equal sign on the left, and we're going to substitute. And hopefully you can hear me when I say this. When you substitute, you need to use some brackets. So we're not going to write b anymore. We're actually going to write -1. Make sure it's in brackets to the power of 5. And we're not going to write c anymore. We're going to sub in the c for 3 and keep everything else the same. Nothing else changes. The only thing that changes is the b. So the b is -1, and the other thing that changes is the c. Those are the only two things that change. Okay? The exponents stay the same, the coefficients stay the same, everything stays the same. So now we have to follow bedmass. I'm going to keep the -10 there. I do not multiply until I do the exponents first. So bedmass means brackets. Inside the brackets, there's nothing I can do. So I'm done with the brackets, and I'm going to go ahead and do my exponents. If you type in -1 to the power 5, you're going to get an answer, but to understand what that means, if you multiply -1 5 times, remember it's a repeated multiplication, -1 times -1 equals +1. I can do that twice. Okay, and then we can do this part. Oh. 1 times 1, which is 1, and 1 times -1 is -1. Okay. If you knew that answer without showing me that, there are many different ways of finding that answer, including using your calculator, but I want you to understand that if you have an odd number of negatives multiplied, the answer will be negative. Now, 3 to the power of 3 is not 3 times 3, it's 3 times 3 times 3. So we've got 3 times 3, which is 9, and 9 times 3, which is 27. Okay, so be careful with your exponents, make sure that you understand what it is. And then we have -10 times -1. I do this in steps. If you have your calculator, you can just type them all in at once, but practicing your mental math is a good thing. -10 times -1 is +10, because when you multiply two negatives, it gives us a positive. And then 10 times 27 is 270. So that is the final answer to today's warm-up.